Morning everybody, Coach Heather here from King Card Fit Body Bootcamp. It is Monday, so we are doing nutrition news. Today we're talking about sugar. Halloween is coming up, so it's a good chance to talk about sugar, what it is, some misconceptions, why we need it, things like that, and talk a little bit about Halloween candy because it is tomorrow night. So first off, sugar, is it good? Is it bad? It is hard to know these days just because of all of the media out there, conflicting opinions. So what exactly is sugar? What do we need it for? What don't we need it for? This is interesting because sugar is it's a fundamental molecule in biology, and we actually need sugar. Sugar makes up the backbone of our DNA. It helps power our cells. It helps store energy for later. Plants convert sunlight into sugar, and then we convert the sugar into fuel. Molecules like glucose and fructose, which are just two of the many types of sugar, are also basic to our biological needs. Even our bacteria love them. So indeed, sugar seems to be a champion, but that is only chemically speaking. Somewhere along the way, sugar became the bad guy. So when did we start hating sugar, and when did we stop wanting to purge it? When did we start wanting to purge it from our diets, from our bodies? And why do we fear it so much? The truth is that that's a difficult conversation to have. That's a difficult one to answer, just because we tend to be emotionally tied to our view on sugar, and what our impression of it is in terms of diet, and whether we need it, and how much we should have of it, and things like that. We're usually emotionally invested in our position towards sugar. So talking about it can bring up a lot of controversy, some intense debate, and even among scientists who are supposed to be objective. Definitely conflict is there. So what is sugar? Most of us, when we say the word sugar, we automatically think of, the white little cubes, table sugar that you put in your coffee. It makes up 90% of those marshmallow cereals that you have in the morning. However, sugar is actually a group of molecules that share a similar structure. So we could actually call them sugars with a plural. So this group has a lot of members in it. So we've got glucose, we've got fructose, we've got sucrose, also known as table sugar. You've got maltose, you've got galactose, you've got lactose, and so on and so forth. Sugars naturally occur in biology and in most foods, even if they are in trace amounts. They are occurring in most foods. So there is, of course, much more sugar in processed foods or refined foods than in less refined and unrefined foods, less processed foods as well. So you are going to find more sugars when it is refined or processed in those foods. Sugars themselves, they live under an umbrella of carbohydrates. So sugars are a type of carbohydrate. So along with the sweet stuff, the macronutrient group also includes starches. So in your carbohydrate umbrella, you have sugars, you have starches. So we're talking about things like potatoes, rice. In that umbrella, we also have fiber. So the husks of whole grains. We have structural building blocks, like chitin, which makes up the shells of crustaceans, or cellulose, which makes up the things like trunks of trees, things like that, cellulose. So the more complex the molecule, the slower it is going to digest. Sugars, which are simpler, digest more quickly. Starches and fibers, which are bigger, more complicated molecules, they're going to digest more slowly, if at all. So that is the reason why eating more fiber can help us feel fuller longer. Most carbohydrates are actually broken down into simpler sugars once they're digested. Other carbohydrates, such as insoluble fiber, don't really get broken down nor absorbed fully, although our intestinal bacteria, they do love to have a little snack on them as well. So you can see why we do need some carbohydrates in our bodies. However, it's just a matter of where that source of carbohydrate is coming from. So we've talked before about carbohydrates being one of our major macronutrients. But talking about what falls under that carbohydrate umbrella, you can see the difference there. Sugars are a type of carbohydrate, but not all carbohydrates are sugars. And that is an important thing to know, because it tells us that not all carbohydrates do exactly the same things for our bodies. So just being a little bit mindful there. We've talked about reading nutrition labels and things like that. So just being mindful when we flip over and have a look at that carbohydrate number. Where are they coming from? Are they coming from fibers? Are they coming from sugars? Things like that. So Halloween is coming. What are some things we can do to sort of steer ourselves clear of the binging? And then we're just going to touch really quickly on some of the sneaky culprits out there in terms of Halloween candy. So something to avoid, and depending your experience with food, really your relationship with food, one thing that we do want to try and avoid when it comes to this time of year is allowing yourself that Halloween candy, those treats, and then thinking that you're going to cut back on a meal, shrink a meal, or avoid a meal to counter that caloric intake. So we've also talked before about energy expenditure and caloric intake, and how that big equation can equal weight gain or weight loss. So some people say, oh, I'm going to have these treats from Halloween, and I'll just skip lunch. We have to think about where those calories are coming from and what benefits we're actually doing for our bodies. So I'm not saying to just cut out the treats altogether, everything in moderation. But one thing to avoid is allowing yourself to have a big handful of candy and then think that it's okay to skip breakfast or skip lunch, so that those calories are balancing out throughout the day. So try and avoid shrinking the meal or skipping the meal in exchange for candy. That's the bottom line on that one. Also, try to ditch that all or nothing attitude. I'm not going to have a single piece of Halloween candy versus I've started on a slippery slope. I might as well just keep going. So you can portion things out. Another good thing to do in terms of portion control is look at the individual sizing. So if you're going to have a treat, then have a treat. They have the smaller sizes, smaller portion sizes. So use that as a guideline rather than, not setting a limit or not setting an amount for yourself, using those portion control techniques. One that I found that I thought was pretty cool and pretty interesting, they recommend that you use mouthwash or sugar-free gum, especially if you're just hanging around your house handing out candy, or if you're walking around with your kids and you may be sampling the candy as they collect it. So the little trick is actually a great one. A minty mouth or a sugary sweet candy, they don't really mix well together. So you won't get the same satisfaction from the sweets, and you'll be less likely to reach for them. Having mouthwash or sugar-free gum, something with that mintiness, is not going to pair very well in terms of flavor with those treats. So try and be mindful of that. Another thing that this website I was reading over recommended, and it may be too late for this one, but is to buy treats that you personally don't like. As many of you know, I have celiac disease, so I cannot have gluten. Halloween is not an issue for me because, fortunately, I guess in my case, the individual packages, they're often not labeled with the ingredients just because they are the smaller sample size or the snack size. So I just don't want to get sick, so I avoid them. But if you can have any treats that you want, a good way to avoid overindulging is when you're handing treats out is to stock up on ones that you don't like. That way you're less likely to reach in and grab some for yourself. Another thing too they recommend is donating that leftover candy, getting it out of the house, because if it's there, it is more tempting. So I'm not sure, actually I'll have a look around and see. I know some of the dentist's office collected in town, sometimes the firefighters or OPP, so I'll have a look and see what I can find, and I'll post it under this video later in terms of locally in the Kincardine area where you can take that leftover Halloween candy. So I have a couple minutes left. I want to talk really quickly about specific ones that they recommend avoiding. So I saw one of these actually. We took our kids downtown to the Saturday, the downtown Halloween, and they got one of those Reese's pumpkin cups. And I won't say who. Somebody in the house ate it. And then I was reading about these. And they say that the pumpkin ones are actually significantly larger than the regular size ones that you can get. So each pumpkin Reese's weighs in at about 170 calories with 10 grams of fat and 16 grams of sugar. The regular size ones, they're 105 calories, so 65 calories less. And then, so yes, that's meaning that the pumpkin is bigger and that you're getting more calories, more fat, more sugar with that pumpkin one. So if you must indulge, go for the classic smaller one rather than the big pumpkin one. The other thing they recommend too, avoiding Skittles, Nerds, other candies that have no relation to real food. So you take your peanut butter cup, for example. It's got peanut butter, it's got chocolate. At least we're closer to actual real food than just chemicals. So if you look at, the fruit-flavored concoctions that they have in the little bags, they're sort of like the, Frankensteins of trick and treat. And they have all kinds of chemical names that all come down to sugar. Tapioca dextrin, titanium dioxide, forms of sugar, no resemblance to real food though whatsoever. So when you're looking at, for example, Skittles here, there's sugar, and then there's corn syrup, another word for sugar. Later on, they've got modified cornstarch, which should read modified sugar. So it's no wonder that the little bags contain 46 grams of sugar, and that's almost twice the recommended amount for a woman for the whole day. So just being a little bit mindful of what we're reaching for. And also really quickly, try to avoid the handful treats. So things like Skittles, Raisinets, things like that. Things where we're just grabbing handfuls rather than, the prepackaged smaller sizes. You take candy corn, for example, that it's supposed to be made with real honey, but that is still sugar as well. So I have a little number here. So 19, which when you get the candy corn, 19 would probably be a little mitful there. 19 pieces is going to have 28 grams of sugar. When you look at 28 grams of sugar, that's almost 3 times the amount of sugar as a bowl of Lucky Charms. So it is kind of neat when you look over Halloween statistics and candy and things like that, how you get it's kind of a wake-up call with some of these things. The other thing really quick, guys, watch out for what scientists call the halo effect. So when foods are labeled as good for you, low in fat, low in sugar, just be mindful of that health halo and to really have a look at the label. With these snack science ones, as I just mentioned a little earlier, they don't always have the ingredients, but you can pop online and find all the information online to see what exactly is in there. Because they give this health halo. Raisinets is a great example. It's raisins, right? So it's fruit. So how bad can it be? Truth is that it can actually be not so good for us. So just being a little bit more mindful of things that fall under that health halo, being mindful that just because it's snack size doesn't always mean that it's the best choice out there either. Of course, all things in moderation, but just trying to be a little bit mindful of what we are putting in our bodies. So thank you for watching, guys. Tomorrow is Halloween. I hope you're having a fantastic time. I hope the weather agrees with us tomorrow night. If you're coming into boot camp, it is superhero day. That being said, if you don't have a superhero costume, you can wear a regular Halloween costume or just bring yourselves without a costume and it's all good. Great workout plan for tomorrow and the rest of the week. Saturday, as many of you know, we have our Bring a Friend Day. So that is, we do once a month. You can bring family member friends, and they can come and work out all 3 sessions. So our 8:20, 9, and 9:40, you can come and join our members with a workout there. And then Saturday night is going to be our members appreciation party at Best Western. Really excited for that. That's going to be starting at 7 o'clock. So thank you so much for tuning in, guys. Again, if you have any questions, any concerns, let me know. And I will see you next week. In the meantime, have a fantastic Halloween and take care of yourselves. Right? Bye, guys.